Hey y'all, Pastor Sam here, and welcome to the Sermon Cast for First Christian Church in Hammond, Louisiana. Here at FCC Hammond, we are a gathering of Jesus followers caught up in this crazy Jesus movement seeking to bring healing and wholeness to our fractured world. We hope you find this message meaningful and encouraging. We would love to connect with you to answer any questions you might have about us, Jesus, or just life in general. How you can contact us can be found in the description below. Just remember, God loves you, we love you. May you experience grace and peace in your journey today and every day. And now, the Sermon Cast.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, how many people are still suffering from the onslaught of pollen? Oh my gosh. It's amazing what you remember and what you don't remember. I feel like pine pollen was just invented like maybe 10 years ago. But I know that's not true because I look at it everywhere now and it's like yellow stuff all over the ground. You know, even when we were in Virginia, it's like yellow stuff, and I'm just like, I don't ever remember seeing this, but it is such a thing, you know? Even with all the rain, I thought, oh, finally, the pine pollen's gone, and then my weather app goes, high pollen alert. I'm like, would you stop? Please, just give us a break. You know, it's still, I think sometimes, except for us, you know, church nerds, we forget that it's still Easter. In fact, it's called Easter tide, technically. And so we can still say the thing we said on Easter because Jesus is still risen, after all. So let's do it again. He is risen. He is risen. Yeah, that's right. There you go. Look at us. See, we broke some rules. Woo. Would you know what else is risen? My ADD. Yeah, that's right. My ADD. It's funny. As I've gotten older, I feel like as I've gotten to live with it, you know, it's such a blessing and a curse, really, because I really don't think I'd be me without it. Like one of the things that it really helps me with is, and I see like really, I connect things well. Or I see connections that other people don't see, like really deep connections. It can give me an insane amount of energy, like insane. Like I can just go forever and ever and ever. And part of those together is this ability to just like hyper focus on something and be able to like really figure it out and just clearly see a way forward. And then other times it is an absolute curse. When it's not hitting, it's miserable. Because sometimes with the connections, I'll see like an overwhelming sense of possibilities. It's like it's too much because you just get them and you just can't see it. Other times it's really exhausting. Like you have all this energy and then but it exhausts others, you know, because of the energy. And the thing that it was funny. Debbie was talking about it, and like there's sometimes like I'll be talking to somebody or they'll be talking to me. Typically, people I absolutely adore, and they'll be saying something. I'm like, and then I didn't hear a word they said, like not a single word. And it's like, remember we talked about this? I was like, no, we didn't. It's like, look, here's a recording of us talking about it, and you responding a full sentence, and it's like I just don't remember saying these things at all. But it's like, but it's not my fault. It's my brain. But it's like and so. I have come to the place, though, that I think differently than a lot of people, that I respect it a great deal. Like, I respect what it is. And I've transitioned, I feel like, where I used to think of it like as a superpower, and then I thought of it as like a foe, you know, sometimes. Now, I just feel like, I think it's probably my age in general, I just feel like it's a really good teacher. Like it teaches me a lot of things. If I really pay attention to it, it tells me more things about me than I think. And it's funny too, because, you know, we're talking about pine pollen. It's like, I never even heard of ADD. Because a lot of, you know what I'm saying? Like ADD just really wasn't a thing forever and ever. And in fact, it had like really murky origins. It really wasn't even thought of until like in Scotland until the late 1700s. And then it really actually became official. Like the first time it was a thing in like the early 1900s in England, and the DSM, which is the manual for diagnoses and stuff, didn't even show up until 1968. It didn't really become legit until 87. And then it really didn't really explode in diagnoses until the 90s, believe it or not. So like I was almost out of high school by the time this thing even was a thing. But here's the thing, and there's this, not everybody has it, and stuff, but I think we all have it in some way, shape, or form. I really do. And maybe not like neurologically, but I am almost convinced I think everybody has spiritual ADD in some way, shape, or form. I really do. Because think about it, it's with our spirituality, we can see all these connections and we can get all this energy from it and we can get all this purpose. But then on the other side of it, it can really overwhelm us. It can exhaust us. And let's be quite honest, there's some things in our spirituality that we hyper focus on and then clearly ignore other things. And I mean, fill in the gaps there about what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. We can hyper focus on this at the complete ignorance of other things that some would argue are even more important. And so that's why, it's one of the reasons why we're doing this series on resurrection stories, because I really think in a lot of ways, when it comes to resurrection, we have some spiritual ADD about it, And I think it's good that we're going to keep talking about resurrection, but more to the point, like resurrection stories about different ways resurrection shows up, new life shows up in our world. And this week, my ADD was at full peak, just so you know. And I'm going to try to rein this in. And so if I don't pull it off, my apologies. But if you get it, it's good. It's really good. But I was looking at the readings and I was taking it all in, and that's what really struck me, is that in all the readings, I feel like we've ignored or miss or avoid the concept and the evidence of resurrection, to the detriment of our faith, how we understand God, how we understand our faith, but really how we understand reality. And it wasn't in any of these readings that I'm going to preach about specifically. It was actually through one that's not even in the lectionary of what we said. It was the parable of the prodigal son, or the parable of the loving father. You know this one. Everybody knows this one. Everybody. And what's funny about it is actually, out of all the things that Jesus said, this is the one, look it up, this is the one that is the most consistent, the most ubiquitous, the parable of the prodigal son in all of his teachings. And you know this, but I'm going to read it just because, we forget. Some things can get so familiar, you just kind of blow over them. But here it is. Jesus was telling us, he said, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one of them said to his father, "Give me the share of the wealth that belongs to me." So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region where he squandered his wealth on dissolute living. Ooh, that sounds fun, though. Dissolute living. I like that. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that region, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs, which is not a great thing. Now he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, I love that one too, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger, and I will get up and I will go to my father, and I'll say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father." Everybody knows that part, right? And some of us have prodigal stories, some of us don't. If we had fun, you have a prodigal story. But we know this. And here's the part. See, I think that's the part we focus on, and then we kind of glance over this part. Is there some lines that you just like? "But while he was still far off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion, and he ran and put his arms around him and kissed him." Right? And then this is what happened. Then the son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." Then here we go. But The father said to his slaves, quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandal on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate, for the son of mine was dead and alive again, and he was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Everybody knows that part, right? But you see, this is where it starts. I'm going to start explaining myself, why I'm reading this. The son was just convinced of a certain way the world worked, right? Like, I did this, there is punishment, and I have to do this. But, and I don't even know if you've ever noticed this. Do you realize the son comes and he's got his speech all rehearsed, and the father absolutely ignores it. Didn't even let him finish his sentence. And he went right into restoring his son, just right away, just completely ignored it. And there's this thing where he just gives him lavishly these gifts in this celebration, and in a real way, it's resurrection, is it not? It's resurrection. He was. It even says it here, like he was dead and alive again. Here it is, resurrection. But then we tend to hang out in that part and we forget the second part. Like there was the other son, who was just as prodigal, if you think about it. So he goes on and says, now this elder son was in the field, and he came and approached the house. He heard music and dancing, and he got mad. He called one of the slaves and asked, what's going on? And the slave said, your brother's come, and your father has killed a fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound. And then he became angry and refused to go in. And his father came out and pled with him, but this is what he said to his father. He said, listen, for all these years, I've worked like a slave for you, and I've never disobeyed your command, and you have never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, he has devoured your assets with prostitutes. Well, he ain't joking around. You killed the fatted calf for him? But then the father said, son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. Well, we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come alive. He was lost and has been found. You see what I'm talking about? It's the same pattern. The son comes with his speech, and he's like, you did this wrong. You did this wrong, Dad, and this is the way it's supposed to go. And the father ignores him again completely, and he says this, you've always been with me. Everything I have is yours. Like, what? Like, shouldn't he have said, like, the other thing first? Like, well, your son, like, your brother was dead, but he's alive again. But then again, and the son refutes what his dad did, but the father reminds him of what they're really there. It's another resurrection story, isn't it? Of like, this way you're thinking it. That's not the way. You always had everything. There's never an end to what I have. It's all yours anyway. And it's just this resurrection of a different way of thinking. And I don't know if you know what prodigal means, but it means to, like, money and resources, spend it, like, freely, recklessly, wastefully, extravagantly, or having or giving something at a lavish scale. But do you see how everybody's a prodigal there? Everybody. Like the father who lavishly gives grace, forgiveness, resurrection, lavishly, and the sons who lavishly waste it. Do you see? It's all a story of prodigal, what's going on there. But here's the thing. I say that to say I see this pattern in all of the readings we had this week. And I needed this parable to tie it all together, because you see this again of the people, usually, who have lavishly wasted grace, or, recklessly spent it or recklessly ignored it. But here's God lavishly giving every single time. Like in Nehemiah, this is literally almost like a call and response. It's like, you saw the distress of our ancestors, and you performed signs and wonders, and you divided the seas, and you threw our pursuers into the depths, and you led us by a pillar of cloud by the day and a pillar at night, a cloud by day and a pillar of fire at night. And then it says that you came down from Sinai and you gave us ordinances and you saw us hungry and you gave us bread from heaven, and we thirsted for water and you gave it from a rock. You see, it's once again God, us in our recklessly wasting, and then God still lavishly giving over and over and over again. And it's really resurrection. Think about it. The Israelites were in Nehemiah, he was talking about the Israelites, but it's even the Nehemiah story, it's death to life over and over again, resurrection over and over again, or Psalms. It's almost like a reminder, I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where does my help come from? From God, whose foot will not be moved, who doesn't sleep. He will keep us. He will provide us shade. He will do all of these things. And once again, it's couched, it doesn't say it, but once again, it's us just recklessly wasting this, just lavishly wasting, like God continues to lavish grace, mercy, forgiveness, and resurrection on us over and over again. And then finally in John, this is where I think is probably the pinnacle of it. Here they were, the doors were locked because they were in fear, but then Jesus come and stood and he said, peace be with you. Twice, by the way, twice. He said, peace be with you. And then it's like the parable of, once again, they were locked in fear and here's Jesus like, oh, you're here and we have an explanation about why we're hiding, and here's Thomas and other ones, let me put my finger in here, all these other things. And Jesus is like, I'm ignoring that. Oh, the Father's given you power. And if you forgive, it's forgiven. And you see, it's the same Father, just completely ignoring what's going on and lavishly bestowing them authority and power. Resurrection, over and over and over again. And see, that's why I say this to say, I really think when it comes to resurrection, we have this certain amount, and really in general, this certain amount of spiritual ADD. Because these are just what? 1, 2, 3, 4 examples I've given of God. This is the way God is, and this is how we are. No matter how we try to respond to it, just God lavishly giving forgiveness and grace and resurrection, but we hyperfixate on what we did wrong, or what somebody else did wrong, or why we don't deserve grace. And here's God once again. God's natural posture is not even to remember or acknowledge why we need forgiveness or grace to begin with. And see, that's why I think resurrection, I think there was a reason why God used resurrection. Jesus was resurrected because it was the culmination of this. It was the culmination of grace and forgiveness and love. Because even if we want to die, if we want to be punished, we can't. There is never a point that God is not going to let us live. Like resurrection is just what it is. And it's almost like, it's not even something, it's almost like we make up all of these things to keep us from the reality of resurrection. And see, and that's what I pulled out of these scriptures. And once again, I hope I probably didn't do it, but when I saw the connectedness of this, I just was like, here's the thing about resurrection. It's the root of our reality. It is the fundamental foundation of our existence. Not even our existence, but of the universe, I believe. We talked about addiction earlier, and I don't know if anybody read Richard Rohr's book, Falling Upward. You should, if you haven't. Great book. I'm actually thinking we should probably do that for forever. But his thing, it's he talks about the 12 steps, but his premise at the beginning of it is we're all addicted. We're all addicted. And I like, Richard, he's so funny. He calls it stinking thinking, And I really believe that, we're addicted to this transactional, I did wrong, I must be punished, they did wrong, they must be punished, God is mad at me and I have to do this. And his thing, it just like with 12 steps, is like you have to admit that you're powerless over this thinking. Like, I don't know why we think like that. I mean, we could pontificate forever to like why we think like that. But the fact is we do, and we have to admit that we're powerless to it. But then Jesus tells us, because when we finally admit our weakness, that's where we find our strength, right? And so if we just admit that we're powerless and that the actual reality of the world is resurrection, I wonder how that would change like everything in our life. Like our health, our money, our relationships, our churches, how we look at God. And you know, you want to talk about pulling from crazy ADD. Has anybody ever heard of and there's a point to this, the Chinese proverb about the father and the son? There seems to be a lot of father and son proverbs out there, isn't there? But here's how it goes. You may have heard this, but this is funny. So it goes, a farmer and his son had a beloved stallion who helped the family earn a living. So one day the horse ran away and their neighbors exclaimed, "Your horse ran away, what a terrible luck." And the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not, we'll see." And then a few days later, the horse returned home, leading a few wild mares back to the farm as well. The neighbors shouted out, "Your horse has returned," and brought several horses home with him. "What great luck!" And the farmer says, "Maybe so, maybe not, we'll see." And then so later that week, the farmer's son was trying to break one of the mares, and she threw him to the ground, breaking his leg. Then the villagers cried, "Your son broke his leg, what terrible luck!" And the farmer replied, "What? Maybe so, maybe not, we'll see." But then a few weeks later, the soldiers from the National Army marched to the town, recruiting all the able-bodied young men for the army. The farmer's son wasn't conscripted because why? Because of his broken leg. And the neighbor shouted, "Your boy is spared, what tremendous luck." And to which the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not, we'll see." But you see, this Chinese proverb is like, it's just a step below what we're talking about here. Like, this is not even like in the realm of resurrection, but we don't even have to say, maybe so, maybe not, we'll see. Reality is resurrection, always. And I wonder what would change if we let go of our old way of thinking that we're addicted to and be released into really this gift of resurrection in our life and in the world around us.